Alan Jackson is remembered today as one of the most respected voices in country music, but his life story is much more than a list of awards and hit songs. Behind the stage lights and applause, he lived through personal battles, painful mistakes, and moments of deep love and forgiveness that shaped him not only as an artist but as a husband and father. To truly understand him, you have to look at the man beyond the cowboy hat, the one who carried the scars of his past and still stood tall through storms that might have destroyed anyone else. Alan Eugene Jackson was born on October 17, 1958, in the small town of Newnan, Georgia. He was the youngest of 5 children in a working-class family. His parents, Joseph and Ruth, raised their children in a small house that was originally built out of his grandfather's old tool shed. The walls smelled of oil and wood, the sounds of clanging metal often echoed inside, and space was so limited that the family grew used to being close and depending on one another. His father worked as a mechanic at the Ford assembly plant, and his mother managed the cafeteria at a local school. They didn't have much money, but what they lacked in wealth they made up for in honesty, hard work, and family values that Alan carried with him for the rest of his life. Music first touched Alan through gospel hymns sung in church every weekend. He listened carefully as voices rose in harmony, not knowing those early melodies were planting a seed in his heart. That seed grew stronger when he discovered Hank Williams Jr. and John Anderson. From them, Alan realized that country music wasn't just entertainment, it was storytelling. It could talk about heartbreak, family, struggles, and small joys in ways that felt real and unpolished. At 16, his parents gave him a simple guitar that cost $50. It wasn't fancy, but it became his treasure. That guitar opened a new world for him, and just 1 year later, he performed for the first time in public during his high school production of Oklahoma. It was only a small school event, but it hinted at the life ahead of him. After school, Alan worked countless jobs to keep going. He wasn't afraid of labor, he did whatever it took to help himself and his family. But music never let him go. He formed a small band called Dixie Steel, and they played in local clubs. Those nights were tough because they had to set up their own equipment, carry heavy speakers, perform, and often go home without pay. Still, Alan felt something every time he stepped on stage, as though the struggles meant nothing compared to the chance to share music with people. Deep inside, he knew his path wouldn't be ordinary. By 1985, Alan made one of the bravest choices of his life. He left Georgia with Denise, his wife, and moved to Nashville. Nashville was supposed to be the land of opportunity for country singers, but for Alan and Denise, it was harsh reality. They lived in a small apartment, barely getting by. Alan worked in the mailroom of the Nashville network, while Denise kept her flight attendant job to help support them. Those were days of sacrifice, where they often wondered if the dream was slipping away. But fate came knocking in the most unexpected way. During one of her flights, Denise met country legend Glen Campbell. She told him about her husband's love for music. Campbell, listening kindly, handed her his manager's business card and told her to make sure Alan called. That small gesture opened the door Alan had been searching for. Years later, after Glen Campbell's passing, Alan would admit that he owed so much to that moment. It was the spark that set everything in motion. By 1989, Alan signed his first recording contract with Arista and became the first artist under the new Arista Nashville label. His debut album, Here in the Real World, came out in 1990 and immediately caught attention. That year, Alan received a gold record, and in a touching full-circle moment, Glen Campbell was there to witness it. The boy from Newnan had finally carved his name into country music. What followed was a decade of both glory and challenges. He released albums like Who I Am and High Mileage, delivering songs such as Chattahoochee, Living on Love, and Gone Country, which became household staples. One of his biggest hits, Don't Rock the Jukebox, was born in a funny and unexpected way when a jukebox broke down during a tour stop. Alan leaned against it, and the broken rattling inspired the rhythm and lyrics that became a hit. These were the kinds of moments that defined him, simple, unplanned, but honest. During the 1990s, as pop influences started to flood Nashville, many artists shifted their style. Alan refused. He believed country music had roots that shouldn't be erased. He saw it as the voice of Southern people, something tied to their identity. This passion led him to collaborate with George Strait on Murder on Music Row in 2000, a song that bluntly criticized the commercialization of the genre. It stirred controversy but proved Alan was fearless when it came to defending authenticity. Then came the September 11, 2001 attacks, which shook America to its core. One quiet morning, Alan woke up at 4 o'clock with lines of a song forming in his head. He wrote them down quickly, and by the time his family returned from Sunday school, the song was complete. That song, Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning, became a healing anthem for millions. When he performed it at the CMA Awards later that year, the audience fell into complete silence, moved to tears. The song held the #1 spot for weeks, won multiple awards, and earned Alan his first Grammy. He later said he was simply grateful that the song touched so many hearts, and it was preserved in the Congressional Record as part of American history. Over the years, Alan kept creating. His album Drive in 2002 included deeply personal songs like Drive for Daddy Jean and Remember When, which told the story of his family and memories. In 2006, he recorded Precious Memories, a gospel album he initially made as a gift for his mother, but it unexpectedly became a worldwide success. Beyond music, he also became a style symbol. His boots, his rhinestone shirts, and his cowboy hat became iconic. Interestingly, he first wore the hat to hide a scar from a childhood accident but later shaped the brim himself and turned it into part of his image. Alan's career flourished, but his personal life faced storms. His love story with Denise began in 1976 when he was 18 and she was 16. Their meeting was unusual. Alan tossed a coin into her blouse at the ice cream shop where she worked, then playfully scared her by hiding in her car. Though it was a strange beginning, it sparked a romance that grew strong. By 1979, they were married. Their early years were simple, filled with shared dreams and the struggles of survival. They eventually bought a farm in Tennessee where they raised their daughters Maddie, Alexandra, and Danny, surrounding them with nature and love. But fame tested their marriage. Constant tours and long separations pulled them apart. In 1998, Denise discovered Alan had been unfaithful. The betrayal devastated her. She later wrote in her memoir that her world felt like it collapsed. She had sacrificed her career and her independence, only to feel invisible in her own marriage. For months, she struggled with self-worth, depression, and anger. Yet she turned to faith, deciding not to give up. She chose forgiveness, though it was not easy, and Alan, burdened with guilt, worked tirelessly to prove himself worthy again. Their reunion was slow and painful, but it became one of the strongest parts of their story. Denise's gift of Alan's first car, a 1955 Thunderbird she secretly tracked down and bought back for him, symbolized the deep love that still tied them together. Alan cried when he realized it was the same car he had once sold to pay for their first home. That moment reminded both of them that love was not about perfection but about forgiveness, persistence, and shared memories. Just as their marriage seemed to reach a place of peace, another storm arrived. In 2010, Denise was diagnosed with cervical cancer. For Alan, it was a nightmare. He had faced career setbacks, criticism, and personal mistakes, but nothing compared to the thought of losing Denise. She had been his partner through every phase of life, the woman who stood beside him when he was broke, when he rose to fame, and when he fell into mistakes. Now she was fighting for her life. Cervical cancer can be deadly if not caught early, and while treatment existed, it was long and exhausting. The news shook the family to its core, forcing them once again to lean on faith, love, and unity to survive. Alan's story, in many ways, is the story of a man who lived both the dream and the nightmare. He made millions of people sing along to his songs, yet at home, he faced trials that tested his character and his heart. He learned that fame could never replace love, that forgiveness is stronger than pride, and that even when the world sings your name, the quiet strength of family is what keeps you standing. With more than 75 million records sold, countless awards, and a place in the Country Music Hall of Fame, Alan Jackson will always be remembered as a legend. But beyond the legend is a man who stumbled, fell, rose again, and loved deeply through it all. His music is proof of that journey, simple, honest, and eternal. At the last stage of cancer, when it reaches stage 4, the disease spreads to faraway parts of the body like the lungs or liver. At this point, Doctors usually give a survival chance of only 15 to 20% over the next 5 years. Hearing the word cancer often feels like a death sentence. For Denise and her husband Alan, their world collapsed the moment they heard it. Denise, who was once full of energy, beauty, and strength, and who had always been Alan's greatest supporter, now had to face a fight that would test her body and spirit. The treatments were long and exhausting. Chemotherapy drained her of energy, made her hair fall out, and left her pale and weak. The life they once knew disappeared overnight, and every day became a battle for survival. Though not many details of her treatments are known, it is easy to imagine the harsh reality she had to go through. At that time, cervical cancer was one of the most dangerous diseases facing women in America. According to the American Cancer Society, around 12,000 women were diagnosed every year, and nearly 4,000 of them did not survive. That meant more than 30 women faced death from this illness every single day. For Denise, the diagnosis was like standing on the edge between life and death. Even though medicine had advanced, the emotional fear of losing her was still crushing for Alan and their family. For Alan, who was used to standing strong on stage in front of thousands of fans, the news was heartbreaking. Instead of being the powerful performer, he suddenly found himself as a helpless husband watching his wife suffer. But rather than collapse under the weight of it, Alan decided to step away from his career for a time and stay by Denise's side. Every long day in the hospital, every time he held her hand, every look of encouragement, and every small word of comfort gave Denise the strength she needed to keep fighting. Out of his own pain and love, Alan poured his emotions into music. He wrote songs like Confessions, prayers for the woman he loved more than anyone. One of those songs, When I Saw You Leaving, carried his deepest feelings, not just as an artist but as a man afraid of losing his life partner. Even when Denise was tired, hurting, and drained, she kept going. She said the reason she found strength was simple: when you know you are loved and needed, you find the courage to face anything. Surrounded by Alan and their 3 daughters, she kept fighting with all she had. The battle lasted for months. Then, slowly, something amazing happened. The treatments ended, Denise began to recover, and the cancer that once threatened her life was finally pushed back. It was more than a victory over illness, it was a victory for love, faith, and family unity. Alan later said, "We thought we were going to lose everything, but we learned that love is the one thing that can never be defeated." Denise's survival was not just a miracle for their family but also a reminder to many others of the strength that comes from love and support. Even today, cervical cancer still remains a serious issue. Thanks to HPV vaccination and early screenings, cases have gone down, but it still affects thousands of families each year. Looking back at Denise's story, it is easy to understand the heavy pressure, the fear, and the emotional storm the Jackson family went through. But her survival showed that hope, love, and family can carry people through even the darkest storms. But life was not done testing them. Just when it seemed like they had overcome the hardest trial, another tragedy struck. In 2018, Alan and Denise's eldest daughter, Mattie, lost her husband, Ben Selecman, in a terrible accident. Ben was only 28 years old, full of life, and deeply loved by the family. The accident happened when Ben fell while trying to help someone onto a boat. He suffered a severe head injury, and despite doctors doing everything possible, he did not survive. His sudden death broke Mattie's heart and left the entire family in grief. Alan and Denise had welcomed Ben like a son, and his loss felt unbearable. Alan later shared his sorrow with fans, thanking them for their support. He described Ben as a devoted man who truly loved his family and was everything they could have hoped for Mattie's future. Losing someone so young and kind was deeply painful. Even in her grief, Mattie chose not to let her pain destroy her. She decided to turn it into purpose. She created a charitable foundation to support women and orphans, using her heartbreak to bring good into the world. This foundation became not only a tribute to Ben's memory but also Mattie's way of finding strength and healing. For Alan and Denise, watching their daughter transform her loss into something positive filled them with pride. It showed the same values of compassion and resilience that had guided their own lives. Alan's songs during this period were full of sadness, reflecting a loss too deep for words. Yet within that sadness was also the reminder of love, kindness, and endurance. Many thought that after so much pain, the Jackson family might finally find peace. But in 2021, another challenge appeared, this time for Alan himself. He revealed to the world that he had been diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a rare inherited neurological condition that runs in families. Alan had inherited it from his father. The illness is not deadly, but it is cruel in its own way. It slowly weakens the muscles, affects balance, and makes walking difficult. For Alan, who had spent more than 30 years performing on stage, this illness changed everything. His unsteady steps and difficulty moving were sometimes misunderstood by fans, who thought he was tired or drunk. Alan admitted with sadness, "If you see me stumbling on stage, it's not because I'm drunk. This is the battle I fight every day." The disease has no cure, and only about 1 in 2,500 people in the US suffer from it, with around 3 million cases worldwide. Treatments like physical therapy, braces, or surgery can help, but they cannot stop it. Even so, researchers are working on gene therapy and new treatments that give hope to patients like Alan. Despite the struggle, Alan refuses to let the illness control his life. Every step may be harder, but he continues to go on stage, microphone in hand, giving his fans the music he loves. "I'm going to sing as long as I can sing. That's all I've ever wanted to do," he declared. By his side through it all is Denise, who knows the pain of sickness herself. Having survived cancer, she now stands as his strongest supporter in his new battle. Their love has proven itself time and time again as a bond that endures every storm. Alan's story is not only about illness but also about strength, resilience, and love. His presence on stage, even when his body falters, has become a symbol of courage. He once said, "I may grow weaker, but the music will live on." Over his long career, Alan has become more than just a country singer. He has been a defender of traditional country music at a time when Nashville was turning more toward pop. His honesty and dedication to tradition made him a respected figure not only among fans but also among younger artists. Luke Bryan, one of today's top country stars, said Alan's songs shaped his childhood alongside legends like George Strait. Eric Church called him a national treasure at the 2024 ACM Awards, praising his honesty and simplicity in music. Even George Strait, Alan's idol and friend, shared the stage with him in a legendary performance of Murder on Music Row, a song that boldly defended traditional country music. That performance cemented their place in history as protectors of the genre's soul. For fans, Alan is more than just a singer. Many remember how he would take time at autograph signings to ask about their lives, speaking softly in his southern drawl. At concerts, when he sang Remember When, entire crowds often fell silent before bursting into tears. The song reminded people of their marriages, their families, and their own personal journeys. One elderly fan once said, "Alan's music is like a diary of Southern life, and each of us has a page in it." Alan's greatest legacy is not his awards, record sales, or fame. It is his ability to prove that simple, honest music can touch people across generations. His songs have become part of America's cultural memory, reminding people of love, loss, and life's most meaningful values. Even now, at 67, while fighting Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, Alan continues to hold on to his passion. In 2024, he announced his farewell tour, Last Call, One More for the Road, which ran from August 2024 to May 2025, visiting major cities. He said the tour was not meant to be a sad goodbye but a celebration, a musical party filled with joy and gratitude. From hits like Chattahoochee to It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere, he gave fans everything they loved about him. Even more meaningful, he donated $1 from every ticket to research for his disease, turning his own battle into hope for others. Fans cried during his shows, especially when he sang Remember When. Fellow artists like Carrie Underwood and Eric Church praised him as a guiding light for country music. Offstage, Alan lives quietly on his farm in Tennessee, restoring vintage cars, fishing, gardening, and spending time with Denise and their daughters. Becoming a grandfather brought him deep joy. "I've got one grandbaby and another one on the way," he said happily. Those simple family moments mean more to him than fame. Though he hasn't released a new album since 2021, Alan continues to write and stay connected with fans online. In 2024, he received the ACM Poets Award, which honored his impact as a songwriter whose lyrics will last for generations. After his final scheduled tour in 2025, he announced one last surprise: there would be a farewell performance in Nashville in the summer of 2026, giving fans one final chance to share the music that has shaped their lives. Alan said, "Some of the best moments come at the last minute, and this is a moment you don't want to miss." For him, the farewell is not the end but proof that music can rise above time, illness, and fate. Alan Jackson is more than just a country singer, he is country music itself. For over 3 decades, he has sung about love, family, and life in the simplest, most heartfelt way. He has made mistakes, stumbled, and faced hardships, but that only makes his story real and relatable. Even as his body struggles, he continues to sing, giving everything to his fans until he no longer can. And when his voice finally grows quiet, his legacy will remain as a lesson in resilience, forgiveness, and the strength of love. His songs will continue to echo in the hearts of his fans, his family, and the soul of America.